Computer says no.
There we go. Yeah, everything's crashed. No, this Hangout on Air is live. Welcome to the Virtual Jug again, everyone. I'm very, very pleased to say that we're coming up to our very first year of complete Virtual Jug success. And with me today, with me and Oliver today. Hey, Oliver, how you doing?
Hi, Simon. It's great to be here today on the 1-year anniversary. I am stoked.
Awesome, awesome. And with us today is Trisha G, and you'll remember Trisha from our very first opening session with the Virtual Jug on whenever it was. I think it was the 16th of October last year or something like that. Hey Trish, how you doing?
I'm not bad. How are you?
Very, very good, thank you. So Trish, since last year, what's been happening then? You're still a developer and advocate at MongoDB.
That's right.
You've become a Java champion, right?
Yes, I have. Like yourself. Congratulations.
But I'm the only one, huh? Damn.
Yeah. And you're speaking at Java 1 in a week or so? A couple of weeks?
Yes. I've got a busy autumn. I've got Java 1 in a couple of weeks. I've got JAX London. I've got Geek Out UK. And I've got Go to Berlin.
Awesome. So if you're visiting any of those, UK, which is awesome, go hear Trisha speak at those. Okay, Oliver, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. You already asked me that, but
I know.
I'll ignore the repetition. I'm actually really excited because we're finally able to launch the long-awaited report called A Short History of Nearly Everything Java. And this is a non-code report, I should say, and basically gives an outline of the entire Java thing, if you want to think of it that way. If it's not related to the language, what else is going on? It turns out there's a lot, and I believe that a lot of people couldn't really describe to, we're saying, a muggle, what exactly is Java? How do decisions get made? How do we know that JDK 9 will be on this day and it will include these things, and so on? I learned a ton in this report, and that's one of the things that I love about Rebel Labs is that I learn so much, and it pays the bills too. So what I'd love to do is send everybody a URL. They can check it out. It's called A Short History of Nearly Everything Java. There's a cartoon with a hipster beard in there. I think it's funny. And that's about it. So expect that in the mail. Thanks, Si.
And yeah, that big picture. Okay, we're coming up to our 1 year. We're almost. So I really want to get us to 2,000. So if everyone could tweet and shout about the VJug, about how cool it is, and get all your friends to join. If everyone can get one person to join, that'll be amazing. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Trisha, who's going to talk about, I think it was 50 or 60 different new technologies in around 30 minutes. Is that right, Trish?
Yeah. This is always fraught with danger.
Cool. Over to you then. And any questions from the audience, please drop it in IRC, and we'll be taking them at the end.
Great. Thanks, Simon.
Nice.
Right, let's try and get screen sharing working because that's the important thing, and make sure I've got nothing horribly embarrassing on my screen. Okay, so excellent. I assume everyone can see that just fine. Right, so you can see it. Great. Yeah. So as Simon said, this is a sort of whistle-stop tour through a bunch of popular and trendy technologies. I'm just got to try and get rid of this. Go away. Popular and trendy technologies, including HTML5, AngularJS, Groovy, Java, and MongoDB. I am, as Simon said, I'm an engineer at MongoDB. So obviously I have a vested interest in this technology stack. I'm a Java person and I work for MongoDB. But what I wanted to do was try and explore building an end-to-end application in a live demo like this to sort of see where those technologies fit and how they all hang together. So this is fully buzzword compliant. It's designed to appeal to the entire audience of conference attendees and Java user group attendees. We've got on the front end, we've got AngularJS, HTML5, and JavaScript, and we've got Bootstrap and Bootstrap for the CSS styling, and this UI Bootstrap library for creating some nice pretty widgets and so forth. In the middle tier, we've got, so for those things, those front-end technologies, those are things I'm not so familiar with. So I am going to use them to build up a UI, and I'm going to use them to demonstrate building new web UIs, but this is not an area of my expertise. So part of this is kind of learning this stuff as much as demonstrating it. In the middle tier, I'm using this lightweight framework called DropWizard to build up a Java middle tier, which deals with RESTful web services, deals with JSON, and persists stuff to the database. And in terms of the database persistence, I'm using a library called Morphia, which I actually contribute to turn my Java objects into MongoDB-shaped objects. And underneath Morphia is the Java driver, which we support at MongoDB, which I also work on. Making appearances as part of this whole process is Gradle, Groovy, and Spock. They're kind of tools I couldn't live without, or Groovy-based tools I couldn't live without in order to build my application. And I lean really heavily on IntelliJ IDEA to provide me with useful shortcuts that I use in my day job normally, but also a couple of cheats just to try and speed things up so that you don't see me just typing in an extremely boring fashion. This is really weird giving a presentation where I can't get any feedback from the audience, so I'm assuming everyone can still hear me and everything's all fine. I should be looking at the chat channel, I suppose.
Everything's good. If there's anything on the chat, I'll interrupt rudely.
Okay, excellent. That's what I like to hear. So in the meantime, I shall continue to talk into the abyss. So hopefully from this presentation, like I say, it's a lot of different technologies, and it's quite, it's going to be very high level. So there's a number of different things you could or could not take out of it. So for Java people, it's either an introduction to the AngularJS side of stuff and modern web UIs, or a reminder of that sort of thing. For me, I hadn't done web development in sort of 5-6 years, so this was quite a good way to see how stuff is done these days. For non-Java people, of which there probably aren't that many at the VJUG, but for non-Java people, what I really want to demonstrate is how Java is not like heavy and slow and difficult to prototype with. It can be very simple. It can be very quick to develop with. Obviously, I'm going to demonstrate some of the capabilities of MongoDB because, you know, they pay my bills. But what I really hope people will take out of this is that if you know the tools you're using, if you know the languages, if you know the libraries, if you know your IDE, you can get really quite productive quite quickly. So without further ado, let's start with the actual project. So the idea is to build a full end-to-end application, not one of these. It's going to be kind of a toy app because how much can you build in 40 minutes? But the idea is to showcase something which you can consider being something out in the real world. The application is something you can use on your phone. You'll use it as you're maybe walking down the street thinking, I really need a cup of coffee, which happens to be all the time, and you can order the cup of coffee on your phone, and the order will be sent to your nearest coffee shop, so that then when you go into the coffee shop, you can pick up your coffee there and then, and there's no wasting time queuing or anything like that. So you can imagine this is kind of a real-world application that uses geolocation, mobile technologies, and so on and so forth. So without further ado, let's start. I want to do this in a kind of user story-driven fashion. I want to do this kind of iteratively because then if we don't have time to finish everything, at least I'll have demonstrated a series of chunks of functionality. The first story is, as a user of this amazing application, I need to be able to see it, which does sound a little bit like code for implement the whole application, story 0. But that's not what I mean. What I mean is, as a developer, I need a framework and an architecture to develop within. I need a server to be publishing stuff to, and I need this framework to work within. So let's get started on this. So like I said, I'm using IntelliJ to build stuff up. This is my Gradle file. It's quite a straightforward Gradle file. If you're not that familiar with Gradle, it follows the same life cycle as something like Maven, but you're not using XML to configure it, you're using Groovy, so it's much more, Groovy's a scripting language, so it's much more of a comfortable fit for something like a build tool. So here's where we say we're going to be a Java project. I'm using Java 8, although I'm not using any of the new features of Java 8. And these are my dependencies. These are the only things I really care about in my build file. So this is my DropWizard dependency. This is my Morphia library to talk to MongoDB. And then I've got a bunch of test dependencies as well. And that's all I need to get Gradle up and running. So that's pretty much all I'm going to say about Gradle. But this is an important part of how my whole project hangs together, and it brings in all of the libraries I'm going to need to use while I'm developing this app. So the first thing we're going to need is we're going to need a server. So this is going to be a coffee shop service. It's going to extend a drop wizard service. So if we look at this, it's a drop wizard service. This takes a configuration class, which is going to be coffee shop configuration. I've had too much coffee myself, so I can't type properly. So let's get IntelliJ to create this file for us. I don't need any special configuration for this application, so I'm not going to do anything else with this class, but we do need it, so we're going to create it. I'm going to get IntelliJ to implement the methods from this service, initialize and run. I'm going to get IntelliJ to fix this problem here, because it can, and then it goes away. This is going to have my main method. This is my service which runs on the back end. So public static void main, that's a shortcut that comes with IntelliJ built in. New coffee shop service, run with the args. This throws an exception, so let's just declare that there. If we were building a real application, we should probably do something with that exception, but for the time being, it doesn't matter so much. Initialize we'll come back to in a minute. And the run method is where we're going to start to configure our application. So we're going to add into our environment, we're going to add a resource, which is going to be a new coffee shop resource. I've got a little helper shortcut, which I created myself, which adds the various headers I want onto my resource class. So this, I want the path of this to be coffee shop, and I want it to deal with JSON. We'll come back to this class later, but for the time being, we just need this to be present. So now I've got my service. It has a main method. It has something in the run, which is going to configure stuff. I'm going to try and run this, and it should fail for the right reason. It's like red-green refactor. Let's try and get this working or not working correctly. Great. So this tells me I need some various arguments. I need to pass arguments into my server. So let's configure this. I've got to pass in this argument of server. While I'm here, I'm going to pass in a configuration file, which is going to be coffee.yaml. You'll notice a pattern in the naming convention of all of my files and classes. So let's create coffee.yaml. I've got a shortcut to help me with this, because what I want to declare in here is I want to tell it the URL to serve the Java type stuff from. So anything which is kind of server-side Java, so puts and gets, I want this to be on a path called service. It's just something I happen to have chosen. But what I also need to serve, as well as the stuff from the coffee shop resource, is I also need to serve this static HTML content as well. So in order to do that, over here on the service, oops, I've got a shortcut to help me do this. I'm going to say my static content, which is the assets bundle thing, is going to be served from HTML, which is this thing here. So then I'm going to add this to my configuration. Now, if I start my server now, it should all work. So this is a little lightweight Jetty server running, and that's it. It's up and running. It's much more lightweight than some massive application server. And then if we go to our coffee, this is going to be our single-page web app, if you like. Let's say this is Trisha's awesome web app. Build that. And now we should see this thing being served, Trisha's awesome web app. So we don't have any content in there, but we can see that we've got the kind of infrastructure working. We've got a server running on the back end. We've got some placeholders for things like resources, and we're serving the static content. So that's story zero. I've kind of got the way to see the application, although I haven't built it all yet. I'm going to try an experiment. I hope this doesn't slow me down too much. I'm going to try checking this into GitHub as we go. Commit changes. This is story 0. Let's commit that. Awesome. So story 1. as a coffee drinker, I'd like to be able to select the coffee I want to order. So this is the part where we start to build up the actual application. The user is going to want to select things like the coffee. So let's go back here to our web page. We're going to turn this into an Angular app. So we want ng app, and we want this to be coffee app. We need to tell it to use Angular. That's a shortcut that comes with IntelliJ. So I can say JS Angular min. I'm going to need to create my own JavaScript file as well. So JS, I'm going to call this, surprisingly, coffee.js. And then I'm going to get IntelliJ to create this file for me. So IntelliJ's got a bunch of helpers for Angular as well as Java, which I found fantastic because I'm so used to using IntelliJ to build up Java, I don't want to be using TextPad to be building my JavaScript. So ngm gives me a new Angular module, coffee app. I'm not going to put any other modules in there at the moment. I'm going to call this my coffee app. I'm going to create, I'll come back to this in a minute. What I want to do is I want a drop down of all the coffee types that I might possibly want to select something from. So let's start with, let's create a div. And this is a shortcut I've created for myself just because this is the sort of thing I'm going to do again and again. So I've created a live template for this. This is going to be an order controller. And then I need, this is another template I've created for myself just to make things easier. This is going to be a group within the order form, and then select ng. This is going to be drink.type. This is the type of drink. I will come back to the ng options in a minute, but this is our drop down for drink types. I'm also going to want to give this a label. Drink. So let's give ourselves a list of drop-down items to pick from. So ng controller, coffee app is going to be my order controller. That's what I called it in the HTML. And I've got a shortcut here because I don't want to type all these, not that one. I don't want to type all these drink types. So this is an array of JavaScript objects. So this object happens to have a name and a family. What I want to do is in the drop-down, I want to select the name of the coffee so I can select whether it's an Americano or cappuccino or whatever. So this is where we do type.name for type in types. And this was if we look here, I called this types. This is the name, that's the field I want to select. So now, theoretically, if I reload my page, that's kind of correct, except for it's not supposed to be on a different line, but that's fine. So now I've got my Americano, latte, tea, cappuccino. Because I declared it in an array, it's ordered in the order it came out of the array. You can imagine that this array might come from a database or from another service or something like that, but for now we're just going to hard code this in here. But what I might want to do is I might want to you know what I've done? That needs to be here. I might want to order this alphabetically. So I can do that client-side with Angular. So order by name. Oops, wait for that to bounce. I've got Americano, cappuccino, latte, tea. So now I've completed story 1. I can select the coffee I want to order. I can't do anything other than select it, but that's what I can do. As the coffee shop, though, I need to know which size you wanted, and I want to know what your name is so that I can make sure that you get the coffee that you ordered. This is all more or less the same sort of thing, so I've just slightly cheated to make it slightly less boring for you to watch. So here we've got size, we've got another thing of drop-downs. This is going to come from a list of sizes. So if we go here, and we can go to the stuff that you saw me accidentally type before, drink sizes, I've got small, medium, large. This is just an array of strings rather than an array of objects. So because it's an array of strings rather than an array of objects, I can just iterate through this without having to select something like the name. And then I also want to select, I want your name. So this is going to be a text input box, and this is going to be, I'm going to call this drink.drinker. Now, when I display this on the screen, I get drink, size, in your name. So that's great. However, you're probably starting to notice something already. I promised you modern web development, so I really want this to not look like it's 1999 all over again. But this turns out to be super easy with Bootstrap. So using some more IntelliJ magic, I can add a link to my CSS, which happens to be Bootstrap CSS. Now I cheated a little bit because I've already got the classes, but the classes, you'll notice the classes are named after what they do, not what they look like. So this is a container, this is a form control, and these are all Bootstrap classes that come by default with Bootstrap. I'm going to add one more magic incantation to make this look acceptable on phones. So meta vp2, and this makes it scale properly on a phone. So now, when I reload this, I get something which looks a little bit more modern. And if I use Chrome's developer tools, I can get it to emulate looking like it's on a Nexus 5, more or less. So here you can kind of imagine this is your phone. So now I can sort of see more or less what it would look like on a phone. But we're not going to do that. We are just going to be aware of the fact that exists. So I've made this look like a modern application, and I've made it mobile friendly with almost no effort using Bootstrap. Next up, the actual interesting bit. Now that I've got the ability to select things on the screen and enter my name, I need to be able to send this order back to the back end so that potentially an actual real coffee shop can get to it. Let's start by, probably unsurprisingly, we want a form to submit. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Got shortcuts. There we go. I want to submit this to a method called give me coffee. All of this inside the form. We need a button, which is going to be our submit button. So it's called submit button. I'm going to put on this button, give me coffee. Number of exclamation marks is proportional to my need for coffee. Let's just reformat that so that my OCD doesn't scream at me. But one of the things I'd really like to do while I'm here is I want to have a look at the JSON that I'm going to serve back to the send back to the server. So let's have a look at that here. Not P, pre. So I can preview this by looking at the drink thing. I want to look at it as JSON. So our Angular model, we've called everything drink. So we've got drink.type, drink.size, drink.drinker. So let's output this drink and see what it looks like. Oh, yes, that should work before I finished everything. Yeah, so now I select the drink type, but remember that type was actually a JSON object, so I get the whole object, I get a size, and I get my name in there as well. So this is what we're going to send to the back end. This is what we're going to send as our actual order. And I created this method, give me coffee, so I need to define this in my JavaScript file. So let's do scope.give me coffee. This is the bit that I usually accidentally type wrong. I'm going to do coffee order.save. I'm going to give this coffee order the ID of the coffee shop I want to send the order to, which at the moment we're going to hard code to 1 because we haven't selected a coffee shop. And then I want to send in the scope.drink, which is the thing we've been building up during the when we select stuff on the UI. What we need to do is we need to somehow define this coffee order, and this is going to be oops, it's not going to be one of those. NGMFA. I can't type and talk at the same time. So coffee app, and this is going to be a coffee order. I think I've had too much coffee already. This needs to take the Angular resource, because this is the thing that's going to post stuff to the server. And then because I don't trust my ability to type URLs, I've got a slight thing to help me here. What I want to do is I want to post this order to a URL which is /service, and if you remember, this service comes from here. I said all my Java stuff, all my REST-y stuff, I want that to be at the URL as service. So /service /coffee shop, because that's the resource I want to post it to. The coffee shop resource is at /coffee shop. And then the ID, this is going to be the ID of the coffee shop, which I've hard-coded down here. And then I'm going to post it to a URL called order, and I'm going to post the actual order. So that should be everything I need to send it to the back end. I need to define where this resource comes from, so I need to add the resource module, ng resource. I need to include that here. What did I say it was? Resource. Now, although I haven't done the back end for this yet, we should be able to see that this has been applied to the UI. I should be able to press this button and something should happen. So let's have a look at the, let's get rid of that, don't need that. Let's have a look at what happens on the network if I start trying to do stuff. Can we see this okay? So I've selected cappuccino, medium, that's my name. This is the JSON object I'm going to post to the back end. If I press give me coffee, oh no, I should refresh this just to make sure I've got all my changes. So let's select everything, put my name on there, press the button. Let's clear this first. Press the button. Good. Now, we're posting it to the URL that I said I wanted to post it to, which is service coffee shop, the ID of the coffee shop. If we click on this, we should also, well, we'll see the, go back, we'll see the 404, and it's a 404 because we haven't defined that yet, that's why. So let's go back. So now let's go and define the stuff on the server. That's all the client-side stuff we needed to do. So now let's go and define the stuff back on the server, which means we need to finally get to this resource class that I created and did nothing with. So we're doing a save, which means that we're doing a post operation, not a get operation. So I have a tiny, tiny cheat just to help me build up a post operation. This is the URI I wanted to post it to. We are posting a coffee shop ID, which is going to be a path parameter of ID, which comes in here. We're going to post in the payload the body. This is going to be called save order. And I'll go through the rest of this in a minute. My formatting is all screwed up. So now let's create this order object. Now, how do we know what this is supposed to look like? Well, we know because here we have the order object that we're going to post to the back end. So let's put this here just for reference. So we know we have, we're going to have an ID, so we're going to have a private string ID. This needs to be told, this needs to tell Morphia that this is the unique identifier for the database. So we're going to import this Morphia annotation of ID. We know we have a size, so private string size, drinker. We will need for testing, I haven't shown this yet, but we'll need it for testing an array, private string array of selected options. And we have this other type, the drink type. So private drink type. Now let's go and create this. Again, just getting IntelliJ to do all my heavy lifting for me because life's too boring to do all the typing. So this, we know it has a name and we know it has a family. That's all we need from drink type, but in order to make it useful to test against and useful to debug, we also need, well, we need getters because that will tell the drop wizard JSON parser how to turn it to and from JSON, which fields it cares about, basically. We need equals and hash code because so that our tests work properly. And we need a toString so that when our tests don't work properly, we know why. So my beautiful tiny little class of 2 fields turns into this enormous thing, which I guess is why people say that Java is somewhat verbose. But it's just boilerplate, and you can just hide it down here and say you don't care about it. I don't care about boilerplate. Whatever. So we need to go back to our order. So that was our drink type. Now we have our drink type in the order. We definitely want getters in here. I'm not going to put the hash code and equals and toString because it's not as important on this, just for historical reasons, the way I wrote my tests. So now we have an order, we have a drink type. Let's go back to our resource. One of the things we want to do is we want to set this coffee shop ID on the order. So order.set coffee shop ID, coffee shop ID. Now we could have done that client side or we could do it server side. It doesn't really matter. I just wanted to do it here to show that you can do various manipulation with the stuff that comes through on the JSON or in the path. So I'm going to create this setter, coffee shop ID. Now the interesting bit, I want to save this order into the database. And we're using MongoDB, don't forget, and we're using Morphia to talk to MongoDB. So what we want from Morphia is something called a data store. We don't have one of these, so let's create a field, not a failed, data store. We want to get it to, we want to type it properly, and then get IntelliJ to import it. Now I want my constructor. My data store is new Morphia dot create data store with a Mongo client and a database name. I'm going to call my database Trisha Coffee. I'm going to pass every time. I'm going to pass my Mongo client in as a parameter because I can. And then down here with my data store, it's quite simple. All I need to do is I just save my order into the database. So this is going to save this POJO, this nice simple POJO which came through on JSON into MongoDB. We need to define this Mongo client. So let's find out where that is. That's down here. We want a new Mongo client here. Now, because I'm going to be running MongoDB locally on localhost in a default port, I'm not going to pass any parameters in here, but I can pass a host name and port number if that's important to this application. For me, that doesn't matter too much. So yes, so now we're connecting to MongoDB, and we have created a reference to a new database that we want to save things to, and we're going to save things to it. Now, I'm not so hasty. I'm going to restart the server and try poking with it with the UI before I decide whether it's working or not. So I've actually created a test to make sure this is working before I start restarting anything. So let's mark this as the test route. This is my test. This is a functional test which is going to go and talk to MongoDB. So that means at this point I need to start up MongoDB. I'm going to start it up with a command which is not there. So I'm going to save all the data into a directory called coffee, which happens to be in this directory. So let's start up Mongo. That's it. It's up and running. It's all started. Let's go and have a look at what's going on there. So this is the most recent version, 2.6.4. Let's have a look at the databases which are currently in there. Because it's a brand new instance started on an empty directory, I have no databases. I've got admin, but it's not really doing anything, and local, which is also not really doing anything. So I've got nothing there. This is a brand new clean instance of MongoDB. Now let's run this test. This is a Spock test, by the way, and Spock is amazing and awesome, and if you can get away with running slightly slower Groovy tests, then I would definitely look at Spock, because it's much more descriptive. I can have method names which look like this. I can clearly separate my given, my when, and my then, which just makes me so happy. Granted, this test is a little bit longer than I'd normally like a test, but just Spock is really awesome for this sort of thing. And I can also initialize all my objects in a nice groovy way. So if I run this test, it's just going to take its while to just do my Groovy compilation and run the test. It goes green. Yay! So let's have a look in the database and see if it's there. Let's show the databases again. Now I have this database called Trisha Coffee. You'll notice that I didn't actually have to create that database. I do a get of the database, and I don't have to do anything like create it, either in the test or in my resource. In my resource, I just say create a data store, which happens to reference this database. So if it's not there, Mongo will just create it on the fly. There's nothing complicated about that. So now I'm going to use this, Trisha Coffee. I'm going to show the collections in here. Mongo has collections rather than tables. This has a collection called order. Now, in our resource, we didn't say anything about specifically which collection to save things into. By default, it will use the class name. So because we're saving this order of type order, it will save it into a collection called order. You can override that behavior, but if you want just a simple behavior, then it will just give you that. So now if I do db.order.find, let's say .pretty, I now have my new order in here. So if you have a quick look back at the test, in the test I created a drink type, coffee espresso, an order with these details. And if we look back at the database, what we've got is we've got the drinker, which is me, my options, my type. And you see that the type, which was a subtype inside order, is a subdocument inside the order document. So Mongo is quite nice for this because you can sort of have these subdocuments, you can have more complex structures expressed inside your collection without having to do any sort of links or joins or anything like that. Also, you'll find that there's a class name stored in here, and that's so Morpheo knows which class to store stuff into when it reads it back from the database. How are we doing? 22. Okay. So let's restart the server and see if this is actually working when we call it from the UI. So let's select something here. Latte, large, Trisha. This time I don't get a red, I actually get a 201 created. And that's what we told it to send to the client. If we look back at the resource, we said once it's successful, send a created response with the order ID and the saved order. And if we look at the database, we see two orders in here now. We see the original one from the test. We can see it's from the test. It's got this selected options array in. And the one from the UI, which was my large latte with my name. So the other interesting thing about Mongo for prototyping is that you don't need all the fields. So this one's got a selected options field in, this one doesn't, and that's fine. You don't have to define which fields need to be in there or which fields don't. So it's nice to be able to gradually evolve your document model as you go along. So I think that's it for this story. I've created my order and I've sent it back to the coffee shop. This is just a quick piece of maintenance. We want to make sure that we clean up after ourselves when the application shuts down, and that's quite easy to do in Dropwizard as well. So I'm just going to add, I'm going to do environment.manage. I'm going to add a new manager, Mongo client manager with the Mongo client. Create this class. What I want is I want this to implement managed. I'm going to save this Mongo client. I'm going to implement the methods on managed. On start, I don't really care what happens to the Mongo client. I might do something like check the server's there and check that I can connect to it, but I don't need to. What I do need to do is on stop, I need to close my Mongo client, so I clean up all my connections, and I'm just basically responsible. So that's all I need to do for that. So it's quite easy to responsibly create and manage things inside Dropwizard. I'll restart that, but I don't really need to restart that. So next up, oh no, every time. I do this every time. Okay, so it's all well and good. I sent it to the server. I can see it in the database. I can even see it looking down here and that I successfully created it, but I actually want to be able to see it see some sort of feedback on the UI to show that my order made it. So let's do that. Let's try and remember how to do that. What we want to do is we want to create a callback to say what to do when you successfully save an order. Let's come to that in a minute. First, what I want is an array of messages. And then I want to say one moment. This is where I forgot what it was I was trying to do, and I don't remember what it needs to look like. Yes, that's right. I might have slightly cheated with this as well. So now what I want to do is I want to, this is the success callback. What I want to do is I want to push onto this array a message of type success. And then this is where I start to use UI Bootstrap to actually use a reusable widget on the screen to display stuff in a useful way that I, as a developer, don't have to spend ages figuring out how to do. I'm going to use this close alert thing, and I'm going to put this on the screen on the HTML. Oh, hang on a minute. Before I do that, I need to say I'm using UI Bootstrap. I need to go back to the HTML. And I need to display this somewhere on the screen. So this is going to be for every message in this messages array. I want you to show me that message, and there's the close alert thing which allows me to dismiss it if I want to. So now when I send my order, we will see order sent. And we can do other stuff with this if we wanted to. So for example, because on that callback I get the actual order back, I can say something like order ID is order.id, something like that. So I can do stuff with the order I got back from the server. I can show an order ID. You can imagine I could turn that into a link and click through to see the status of the order and so forth. But obviously we don't have time to implement that at the moment. So that's this bit. We've got it saving to the database, and we have it responding to the user saying, yes, I got your order, thank you very much. We're not going to have lots of time for questions, so I'm going to skip over this particular story because it's just more of the same sort of thing. But the interesting bit now is obviously I need to know where I'm going to pick my coffee up from. I said it was going to be your nearest coffee shop, and you don't know which is your nearest coffee shop. This is where we get into some interesting geolocation stuff with MongoDB and with HTML5. So let's start by going back to our resource. We want a new method here. Let's just close this off because we're running out of screen real estate. We want a new method. This is going to be a get method because what I want to get is I want to get my nearest location. Although actually, before we do that, I need to put some coffee shops into the database. So what I've got here is I used OpenStreetMap data and I downloaded a boatload of XML StreetMap data. So I have here Cuisine Coffee Shop, and it has an address and a city, and then what's the important thing? Oh no, it's all the way at the top, and my poor computer just doesn't have enough memory for that. It's going to completely freak out. It has a latitude and longitude to show that location. So we can see we've got a coffee shop, it's called Gloria Jeans, it's at this lat and long. What I want to do is I want to store this information in MongoDB so that I can query MongoDB for my closest coffee shop. MongoDB has built-in geolocation stuff, so it's like super easy to query if you've got some data in there. But what I need is I need this to be in JSON, and I need this latitude and longitude to be in GeoJSON. So I'm going to use Groovy to do this because Groovy is awesome. Groovy is really good for scripting type stuff because that's what it's for. It's great at XML stuff. And so what I'm going to do is I use the Java driver, which is the thing that underlies Morphia, which is a Java client, but Groovy can obviously just talk to it really, really easily. I'm going to get the same database I've been working with, but get a collection called Coffee Shop. I'm going to go through all these coffee shops, and I'm going to turn the XML into JSON. And what I need to do is I need to take this longitude annotation, this longitude attribute and this latitude attribute and turn it into a coordinate pair to go into the database. I need to do some various validation to make sure the name is there and it's not a nonsense name. So if we run this, which it's not going to do. Let's try. It's typical, there's always something. Let's delete that and try again. If we run this, and it will completely fail. Something always goes wrong in this demo. This hasn't gone wrong before, so it's always something new. So what we should see is it's going through all this XML and it's turning it into JSON and then storing this into MongoDB. It's throwing away the stuff it doesn't care about and it's storing all these values into MongoDB. When it's done, it says we've imported 8,734 records. Now, if we go back here, what have we got? If we show collections, we now have a coffee shop collection. So if we do db.coffeeshop count, we have 8,734. If we just have a look at some of them, let's say find, let's get like 5 of them. And we can see what we've got here is we've converted our latitude and longitude into this coordinate pair in an array, which is the format that I need them in order to query them properly. And we've got all these other values, all the other information about the coffee shops. So now we've got that. Let's create the method to get my nearest coffee shop on the resource. This is a, oops, what happened there? IntelliJ, stop trying to be so clever. This is a get method. It's going to take the latitude and the longitude. It's going to be called get nearest because I want to get my nearest location. What I'm taking here is my current latitude and my current longitude, and I want to return the coffee shop that is closest to those values, closest to that latitude and longitude. I have a tiny cheat, so I don't have to type all this out. Now, Morphia, at the moment, Morphia doesn't support the exact query I want out of the box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get to the underlying Java driver that Morphia is using and use that to create the query because obviously that does support the query I want. So I'm using the data store to get the database, which is the same database with the collection. What I want to do is I want to find the very first coffee shop that matches my criteria. I'm looking for the location that is closest to these values. I actually don't need that. That's not what I wanted. So it will give me the closest one. If there isn't one, I'll get a 404, which you sort of expect. Otherwise, it will return this coffee shop. Now, this is not some nice, pretty order object or a pojo that we've created for ourselves. This is basically a kind of raw document object that comes out of MongoDB, but it can be serialized really easily into JSON, so I don't have to worry about turning it into some other type in order for it to be serialized to JSON. It will just happen magically because there's a good match between JSON and BSON, binary JSON, which is what we store stuff in MongoDB. So now if I run my test just to make sure everything's fine, where should we go? Let's try Westminster Abbey. Let's run this test. And it goes green, yay! So that's awesome. So that's working. So I need to restart my server because I added a new method on the back end. I need to not do that. I now need to put the JavaScript in place to make that call back to the server, which I have done here, coffee shop controller, which is a tiny, massive cheat. This is more of the same sort of thing, kind of. So I'm using the browser to get my current location, and then I'm going to pass that location, this position, the latitude and the longitude, into a coffee shop locator. So let's create the coffee shop locator. MFA, coffee app, coffee shop. Oh no, you know what? I've got a cheat for this as well. You'd be surprised to learn. What it is though. Yeah. This is my coffee shop locator. This is the URL that I'm going to go to in order to get to my closest coffee shop. And then finally, I need something. I need to not do that again. I need something to call these JavaScript methods. Oh no, so I'm calling these JavaScript methods already by default. When I load the page, I automatically want to go and find my nearest coffee shop. And then I want to show the user where they're going to be picking up their coffee from, which is going to be find my coffee. I'm going to use, I'm just basically going to display this on the screen. I'm going to show using the latitude and the longitude from this nearest coffee shop I got from the server. I'm going to hopefully show it on a map, if I can remember the correct combination of keys. Yay! So this is my closest coffee shop. If I click on this map, I've got a bit of a hack just to try and show the location on Google Maps because I wasn't going to struggle with the Google Maps API as well. But basically, I can put in the latitude and longitude and it shows me where this coffee shop is. It's around here, which is quite close to where I live, in Seville. So yes, so that's that story. We are really running short of time. Why do I keep doing that? Let's just quickly wrap up. In terms of caveats, yes, I threw together an application in less than an hour. It did take me slightly more than that to create the original application, to put the framework together. It took me about a week and a half. Most of that was learning Angular because I didn't know any Angular at all. But once I'd learned this technology, once I understood how it hung together, now I can obviously put this app together in an hour. But I also did use the same technology stack for a MongoDB hack day, and I put together a working app in less than 5 hours using this technology. So it is quite a good way to prototype stuff on the JVM without having to go to another language or another platform to do that stuff. Obviously, I also cheated a bit with IntelliJ to save you from having to watch me type everything all the time. And I haven't covered anything in any great depth. I've sort of skimmed at the features of all of those different technologies, all those different languages. But the aim is really to show you where the technologies live and how they all hang together. I used a bunch of resources to put this stuff together. The REST stuff, because I haven't done any RESTful web services for a while, everything I know about REST I got from this book. The Angular stuff I learned from these two videos. These slides will be online afterwards, so you'll be able to find them afterwards. You don't have to sit there desperately taking pictures of your screen to find out what the URL is. All of the technologies I used, they all have pretty good documentation, and a lot of the other stuff that that I showed you there, I picked up from their websites. Obviously, the main things for me to point out here are MongoDB has a load of stuff on the website. There's free education classes on there as well, so if you want to learn how to use MongoDB from Java, there's a whole course on it, for example. Morphia, which is the project I mentioned and have been working on, has documentation too. The actual code is here on GitHub under my GitHub repo. So we have like very limited amount of time for questions, but we do have time for questions.
Cool. Thank you very much, Trish. That was an awesome session. So we don't have any questions yet, but for anyone who wants to ask any, please pop it straight into IRC. A couple of comments about Lombok. Any reasons you're not using Lombok, or?
No, not really. So I picked this whole stack of technologies based on, of all the conferences I've been to over the last year. I mean, I put this talk together at the start of this year. All the conferences I went to last year, these are the technologies I heard most mentioned last year. There's a couple of other things I'd like to try out. Like I'd like to try Leaflet for showing the stuff on a map. Which I wasn't really playing with it the other day. Israel was playing with it, but Leaflet looks pretty interesting.
Okay, no questions? I can't believe that. Everyone's really It's been good. Despair says, why not dependency injection? Just kidding. Carl Jockle says, Code School has a really good free Angular course as well.
I think there's a few things, there's a few patterns I use there in Angular which I don't think are currently the patterns that one would necessarily use. So I will add the caveat that I'm not an Angular expert. I believe I know there are multiple ways of doing what I've done, and I believe there are various arguments for and against different approaches. So this is definitely not meant to be a best practice talk on Angular.
Okay, cool. Everyone's just saying really great presentation, nice presentation. Thank you. So
awesome. That's great.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Trish. A couple of things that I will mention coming up in August. We have a JCP and Java session on October, a live session at Geek Out UK. So we're going to run our first live session. That's going to be exciting and scary at the same time. And then later on in October, we have Mr. Venkat himself, who's going to be giving a session on reactive Java. Let me just double check. And yeah, that's it. That's it. No more questions. So Trish, thanks very much again. I hope you're enjoying the new Seville weather. And so see you at Java 1 and Jackson Geek Out UK.
Yeah, I'll see you at some conference.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks very much for attending, guys, and see you soon. Bye.
All right. Bye.